Hello, my name is Hans Brown, and I serve as the executive platform owner for the Loans Enablement Platform at BNY. I've had the privilege of working for BNY in Europe, Asia Pacific, and North America, and have held a number of leadership positions, including the Chief Information Officer and Head of Technology for Corporate Trust and Depository Receipts, Corporate Engineering, the Global Head of Innovation and Partnerships, as well as the International CIO. I grew up in Ghana, West Africa, and Liverpool, and I'm a proud alumnus of the university. I obtained my master's in civil and structural engineering in 1998 and have traveled the world ever since.
Hans, we're really pleased to be speaking with you today. We're delighted to have you on the podcast and discuss impactful leadership, which is one of the four pillars of the University of Liverpool's leadership commitment framework. But before we get started, and we do this with every guest on the podcast, can you please tell us a little bit about your background and how you have arrived in the position that you're in today?
So maybe I'll thank you very much for having me. It's great to be able to give something back to the university that clearly gave so much to me in terms of where I am at the moment now. So a little bit of a Potter background. I obviously studied civil and structural engineering in Liverpool. I was attracted there primarily because it was one of the only places that allowed me to do a first degree Master of Engineering in structural and civil engineering. I will tell everybody that I quickly discovered on a rainy site in Edinburgh in the middle of February that working outside in the cold and rain and wet wasn't really for me. So it was great, but I had a career pivot at that particular point and went to work for Marconi Software Solutions, formerly part of the GEC, the big conglomerate. Then left there to come work for Canon Research Europe, which did a lot of R&D in figuring out fast-moving consumer goods, whether it's the digital SLR, multifunction printers, and so on. Then left there to come work for Dealogic, which is a data analytics company that does a lot of data analytics for financial services. I got my first real foray into creating new products out of nothing. And then finally at BNY in London, then in Singapore, and now in North America. And I've had a variety of senior leader roles while I've been there, but kind of really well traveled. And I like to say within BNY, I'm a member of the Three Continent Club, in that I've worked for the bank across three of the continents that it exists, three of the five continents that I've worked in. Antarctica is different, but we'll take a free.
So in terms of your sort of the places you've been across the globe and the places that you've worked in, where does Liverpool sit in that sort of hierarchy of maybe cities that you've been in?
So I'll say Liverpool's been seminal for many reasons, and my family's ties to the city run very, 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 very deep. My great-grandfather's family moved over here from Ireland and started a pub in the Dingle. My dad was born in Garston and went to architectural school just right next to the current foundation buildings and Old Hope University, I think it was at the time, down there. My cousins still live here. My aunt still lives here. Liverpool is home to the greatest football team the world has ever seen. And my ties to the city run very deep. I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm very proud of the fact I am from Liverpool. I was educated in Liverpool. I am the son of the city. I'm also equally proud of the fact that I grew up also in West Africa, in Ghana, West Africa. And a lot of the ethos between where I grew up and Liverpool in terms of, entrepreneurial spirit, our can-do attitude, our friendly nature, they kind of all resonate to me. But Liverpool and I go, I would say we go way back.
Yeah, and when you say the greatest football of all time, I'm presuming you're talking about Everton.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know there was another team in Liverpool. Put it that way. I didn't know there was another team in Liverpool. No. It's we have this. My family and I are very strong Liverpool fans. My kids can actually say they've been members of the club since the day they were born, since both of them were registered as fans, I think, within 2 hours of birth. My son was a bit of a case because he was born in Singapore, so we had to make the time zones work for us in order to be able to hit the same day. But I always wanted them to be able to have a fan colored card that basically had member since, and it's their actual birthday. I thought that was a nice touch. And also kind of brings them up the right way right from the start.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm split camp in our house, half Liverpool, half Everton. So I'm with you. Thanks, Hans. That's a really nice synopsis of your career and your background, and it was lovely to meet everybody the other day. Can I ask, as part of the leadership commitment framework under the impactful leader pillar, we very much talk about the behaviours around inspiring and motivating others. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, how do you inspire and motivate others, particularly if you're not feeling as motivated and inspired in that moment yourself?
So I'll say this one is a little bit, and my feeling on this is a very personal thing, depending on what your own personal psyche is. But for me, at its essence, I always say it always begins with your why. Why is it, why do you do what you do? And do you understand the nature of your why? Because my firm belief is if you understand what your why is, you can get to the root of why you're feeling uninspired at that particular point in time. If it's fatigue, if it's a dissonance between the values that you hold dearly and what you're seeing at the moment, there's a, for the want of a better phrase, there's a why there's a why that kind of causes that. And being able to know that is part of the first, for me, that's part of the first part of the problem. The other part for me is really grounding yourselves in what is the sense of the mission you're on. So if I kind of look at this organization's persisted for 240 years. It's been continuously innovating for 240 years, which means it's had a chance to do it the easy way. It's had a chance to kind of phone it in, as it were. But it didn't take that. It basically created products, it created services that have either powered nations or enabled people to be successful as they go through. So if you take that, your sense, your duty, or the role you are here is a custodian of some of that success. And that's pretty much. Then the other thing is, for me, is every morning when you wake up, irrespective of how you feel, you've got to know your mission is aligned to that of the mission of the organization. You've got to know you can't do it alone, that you need other people on the journey. And knowing that other people are counting on you as much as you're counting on them, that kind of gives me that little kick up the backside that I need every now and then to say, hey, stop wallowing in your own self-pity, get a move on, dust yourself up and kind of get on with it. Then the other thing is being really mindful that credibility once lost is really hard to regain. If you tell your team you're going to be there for them all of the time, if you tell them, when I need help, I'm going to call for it. When you need help and you call for it, I'll be there. And you say all those things and you don't do them, or you don't show them, you don't give them an ability for them to thrive along with you. Once you lose that, you can't get back. Mm-hmm. So it's like all of those things kind of layered together, they kind of keep me going.
Well, you've just spoke about other people there and the importance of them. I'd like to just come on to sort of your role models and mentors. You've been in various places across the globe, as we've discussed. Have you had those types of role models and mentors throughout your career journey? And if you did, do you think they shaped your leadership style as it is today?
Not just even my leadership style. I think my role models, my mentors have shaped me as a person.
Ah, right. Okay.
In terms of, and, there's no shortage of some I've met, some I haven't, some I've read about, but they've shaped me in lots of different ways and for lots of different things. So, I remember being in college in Ghana when Nelson Mandela walked free. And I remember thinking, oh, imagine how nuts the world is going to get. And I remember him preaching what I'd say is a slogan of forgiveness or reconciliation. And somebody who had every, what I'd say is every understandable right to kind of want to sell scores, get even, didn't, and elevated the greater good above everybody else. And it kind of taught me a lot about humility, trying to be selfless, trying to really understand I kind of think you always read these things about servant leaders, and it's something I really aspire to in terms of my own leadership ethos. But seeing it in action was kind of pretty impressive, like really, really, really impressive. And then, there have been leaders within our organization that have actually taken time out and invested time in me and helped me understand and appreciate the value of good, strong, direct feedback that is timely, isn't couched and made pretty, isn't, it's just useful because I needed to hear it to enable me to grow. I think back to my grandparents who basically started in Liverpool with next to nothing and set a foundation which we're all standing on. So lots of mentors, lots of role models. And I always kind of say you can find a role model in everything. One of the stories I tell that gave me a lot of inspiration was I went to China for the first time when I worked for BNY. I'd never been to China before. And one of the things I do in every city I go to, especially if it's a new one, is walk around the city and get a feeling for the place. What are people buying? What are the shopping bags? What do the supermarkets have in the store? Are they mainly Chinese local goods? Are they all mainly foreign imported goods? Are they looking down? Are they looking up? Just to get a sense of the place, because there's nothing you can't learn. There's so much more you learn by walking around than you would do from reading in a book. And I saw a beggar on the streets, and the man was poor, really, really, really kind of down on his luck, as it were. And so I had some Chinese money in my pocket. So I reached in my pocket and I did what any self-respecting Scouse guy would do, which is reached out and handed him some of the money. This guy looks at me in horror and goes, "No," in Chinese. And I'm like thinking, dude, you really need this. I'm not being funny or anything, but you really, and he looks at me, "No." He shakes his hands like this, "No," really violently. And he reaches out underneath his dirty pullover, pulls out, and this is pre-COVID, pulls out a laminated card with a QR code that linked to his WeChat wallet.
Wow.
And I'm on the street in China, and the beggars don't take cash. They want you to digitally top up his WeChat wallet. Blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, because this is pre-COVID. And I was like, okay, the future of payments is here already. We just haven't realized it yet anywhere else. So all of those, and I use this as inspiration kind of always happens in the weirdest and strangest places. You've just got to kind of have your eyes open for it. It isn't always this big figure. It isn't always a Mandela. It isn't always your professor. It isn't always, sometimes it comes in the weirdest and the strangest of places, but that doesn't make it any less impactful. That thing has stuck with me for ages, like for ages. No. And here's my QR code for you to top up my wallet. So I put my cash in my pocket, put my tail between my legs, and walked away. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. And is that ubiquitous across China? Did you find, or is that?
I only went to Shanghai and Beijing, which are the two places we do business, but it's one of those things you kind of think about. On hindsight, it makes absolute sense. I'm not going to get robbed.
Yeah.
I have it in one place. I may not have a bank account because I don't have a fixed address, but I have access to a system that I wouldn't necessarily have if I had just cash that was stuck in a cup somewhere, traveled with me. It wouldn't get wet. The dog wouldn't eat it. 1,000 other things. And it made absolute incredible sense. It just took a beggar on the street to peel the wool off my eyes for me to see it.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, blew my mind too. Just like no cash. And then I tell everybody that the converse to that is when I first moved into, I first got asked to write a check. And this was in 2020, and I got it horrendously wrong because I'd forgotten how to write a check. So I went from digital cash to write a check in one fell swoop of spin.
Can I ask you about, talking about sort of well-being and your leadership journey in terms of the kind of hours that you're working and that sort of working beyond that 8-hour day and sort of setting that example. The question that I was asked to ask was, do you think that you can get to leadership positions by sticking to the standard working hours, or do you think that there needs to be that sort of flexibility and adaptability to work beyond to be able to kind of progress through your career?
And I'd say that may be organizationally dependent as well as individually dependent. I love what I do. Like, I really love what I do. I love creating incredible products for our clients. I love making the organization I work for run better every day. I love the fact that the team grows along with me. I love all of those things. And I've always got this thing, if you love doing something, it's pretty hard to count the time you spend doing it. If it aligns with your purpose of what it is, it's pretty hard to kind of. So I think it's a combination of an individual thing in terms of what you love, how's it aligned to what you get as a purpose from it, and so on. The second thing is it also depends on the kind of industry you are and so on and so forth. So I look less at the hours, and I do work an inordinate amount of hours, but I choose to because I like it. I like doing the things that I do. I like the fact that when one of my team or one of the teams that's working with me is in a crisis, they can pick up the phone and I'm there, not just as, hey, you're the lead of my organization, but as a person, you're there. I used to work in engineering and technology for a long time before. I would say in engineering, the weekends actually your work, the start of your work week. Because what needs to happen is everybody needs to be out the systems, upgrade them, and put things in place, so on and so forth. So it's not, it's industry, and it's industry specific, it's role specific, but it's also a lot of you. I think one of the questions I got asked last time was, how do I balance life and work and so on? And my response back to that was, balance implies stasis or inertia or no change. There's no growth that happens in that. What I'd like to practice, and I practice really intensely, is how do I integrate my work and my life? So one of the programs that the organization has is a 2 weeks work from anywhere. So work from anywhere, in which BNY has an office. My wife is French. My kids speak fluent French. And there's nothing that reinforces their attachments to French culture other than living in France. So in the summer, we go to France. I work out of France for 2 weeks. My kids go to an immersion. They go to a summer camp, sleep away, immersion camp in France. I always make the thing. I put in 2 American, English, Chinese kids in, and I get 2 French kids come back out at the end of the week. My work gets done, and I get a chance to integrate my work and my life in one place. So I would say finding the organization that allows you to do those kind of things allows you to integrate better. And once you integrate, what you're not looking for is you're not looking for balance. You're looking for that continual change as you go through as a person. But balance always worries me because, like I said, it implies stasis, no change. And with that, there's no growth.
Yeah, and I guess your what you said right at the beginning about having a clear why, I guess that really feeds into that, doesn't it? Because if you've got that why, then you'll be able to, think about that integration in a bit more depth, I would imagine.
Yeah. And look, it's partly also, it's like one of the things that I learned pretty early on. My granddad in the UK said this to me, and he's, gruff Irishman, gruff Irish, from a really, really deep Irish stock, worked as a shop steward at the Lucas power plant, the Lucas plant in Bootle and so on. And he always used to say, don't try to be somebody else. It's hard enough work trying to be yourself. Try to be somebody else on top of trying to be yourself. That's like damn impossible. Don't, just trust who you are and trust who you are is good enough. And don't, whatever you do, don't try to be somebody else. And that kind of, once you align that with your why, it's pretty, it's not easy, but it's just a lot clearer, I'd like to say.
Yeah, it sounds like good advice, definitely. You've
He was a
spoken.
no-nonsense man, that, give him that. He was very no-nonsense.
Yeah, sounds like my Irish family as well. You've also spoken about, I think you mentioned servant leadership, which is an interest that seems to resonate with you quite a lot. You've spoken about, your people and things like that. So in terms of that leadership style, that servant leadership style, what is your approach to working out what goals you and your team should be pursuing? And then what is your sort of, I don't know, what is your ethos around the validation check that those goals are still relevant?
Okay. So, and I'll maybe separate them into a few results and a few, what I'd say, personal based goals. So, one of the things I really look for is whenever you have a chance to, you should be accountable and take ownership. That's what a servant leader does. So, you're accountable, maybe not responsible, but you're accountable and you take ownership of the challenges that come your way. And so, being a servant leader for me is the team is successful, not because of you or through you, but you enable their success. So, in effect, what you're trying to do is you're trusting your team and you're empowering them to succeed through you, not because of you. And if you do that, then you get a chance to be really able to espouse, and it's a bit, I'm maybe going to struggle with how I phrase this. So maybe let me kind of try and I'll see if I get it right the first time around. There's a real fine line between confidence and arrogance. And you can be humble and confident, but it's very hard to be humble and arrogant, or impossible. So you can be humble and confident, and in that way, imbue and empower your team to also be confident in their own abilities. And a real servant leader for me drives that line. They encourage self-reflection. They encourage team level reflection. They evaluate what they've done. You evaluate what you did and how you enabled more success or not. You find out what it is you need to do next. You find out about how do you give and how do you solicit good, high quality feedback and then action it. You get a chance to be able to say, I'm stuck, I need help. And know the team will provide the help. And conversely, the team can also say, I'm stuck and I need help, and you'll be able to. So a servant leader, in effect, what you're doing is, for me, is you're enabling the team to be able to output greater than the sum of its collective parts, and each individual to be able to perform in a level that actually exceeds their own expectations of what they're capable of. And when you add them all up together, it's a pretty powerful thing. And that's, I try to say I'm a student of it. I'm by no shred of the imagination anywhere close to one, but, it's something I believe really strongly in. And I think if done right, organizations really thrive and people really thrive in that.
You talked about in terms of kind of allowing your team to be supported through you and be the best that they can be. What I wanted to talk to you about is about that sort of creation of psychological safety and the importance of that in terms of enabling your team. For example, if they're having a dip in performance or they've made a mistake, or, it's building that team up and creating that trust, which psychological safety will do.
So, and I think I mentioned about right up front, you can't do it alone. I need others, or we all need others in order to be able to succeed. So first things, I try to get rid of the filters and the hierarchy when we're getting established relationships. The most junior person is no less important than the most senior person. So it's, again, really, really, really deeply on trying to get rid of those hierarchies that kind of filter or get rid of information. And that empowers the team and gives the team a sense of security and safety in terms. If I'm the expert at this particular thing, I'll be the person I'll be called on. and my work will stand for itself and not as the through filter through somebody else. There's also a need to adapt your own personal style, depending on the style of the situation. Yeah. In a crisis, you need a different style than you will need if you're in a consultative discussion about a deep personal issue and a deep personal growth issue. So kind of adapt in the style. You can't walk around with one style and think that's all that's going to be there. And I talked about a little bit of doing what you say you're going to do. I kind of, if you think about a say-do ratio, your say-do ratio should be 1. Now, there'll be times when you might not be able to get it to 1, but your say-do ratio should be 1. So just kind of be mindful of what you say. And if the team see, and this person says they're going to do something, they do it, or they're very clear with me in their communication of what they can and they can't do, it generates that level of safety, because the lack of safety comes in uncertainty. So what you're trying to do is not so much as eliminate uncertainty, but provide a context that whatever uncertainty comes, we'll work through it together. When the teams see you asking for help and you model that behavior to say, hey, I need help too. And you jump to their help as much as they jump to their help, that generates a little bit of it. And this for me is probably, you got to work hard, really hard at the hard work. And the hardest work is a self-reflection that says, what could I have done better? How could I have made this other person more successful? What did I miss? And everything is 2020 with hindsight. Everything, you can plot everything with hindsight. So make use of it. Then the other part, and I think this is probably more comforting for engineers and people who love math like myself, is it's so easy to ignore the emotional aspects of work and people. So whilst I'm a huge believer in data over everything, sometimes you don't have all of the data, or you can't tell that level of emotional. So there's got to be a little bit of, you've got to be empathic and put yourself out there. One of the things that, okay, it's taken me a little while. Empathy and sympathy are different. Who would have figured? But apparently, yeah, they are. And that's a piece of work that I'm working on at the moment to try and get to, hey, how do I differentiate the two? When's the right moment for each one? So it's kind of this. And at its core, though, in terms of creating psychological safety all the time, the question that I keep asking myself continuously, why would anyone want to be led by me? And I keep asking myself all the time, because I should never take it for granted. Being given the privilege of leading a great team is a privilege. And so why would anyone want to be led by me? And that's something I keep asking myself continuously all the time. And the answer's not always nice, but doesn't mean I shouldn't ask the question.
Thank you. This is a question that I've been asked to ask you. You value nurturing staff to retain them in the business. However, as you've moved between sectors, what do you see as relative merits of each progression route, and how can we strike a valuable balance between homegrown and brought-in talent?
At its fundamental core, I do not believe anybody comes into work with the desire to do a bad day's job. Everybody wants to do their best. Everybody wants the sense of accomplishment from doing great work. Everybody. You won't wake up, get ready, commute in with the sole purpose of doing a bad day's job. That's the fundamental thing. So I think there's a balance between bringing fresh ideas in, because it allows you to see the world differently, having expertise that's honed over a long period of time, and blending those two together. So I don't think it's a one or the other. I think it's a both. And I think talent mobility is a brilliant thing. So I've been at this organization for 15 years. I've held about 10 different roles for 10 different managers in 3 different continents, but I'm still at the same organization. So I think the part I kind of talked about growth, about searching for how you progress, about looking for those learning opportunities that come from that lack of stasis and that, avoiding that inertia. I think that's the more important thing. I think what tends to happen is if you grow stale because you're not changing, you're not growing, you're not developing, then you get stuck in a box. That's not a very pretty box. And then the next shiny thing looks nicer and better than you. However, if you're continuously changing, if you're continuously bringing the lessons from your previous roles into your current role, then you become a multiplier. Then you are the shiny new thing because you bring the best of both worlds with you. So I don't think it's an awe. I think it's a real, are you as invested in your own personal development than not? If you're investing in your personal development 10 year or how long you've been in an organization, I don't think matters.
Yeah, it's about having that growth mindset and continual improvement and feedback and wanting to improve and be better. And yeah, and you'll create that atmosphere for your team to come along with you on that journey as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we've got to the end, Hans. It's absolutely flown by. We always finish the podcast with the same question. So what we like to do is ask our guest if they've got 3 or 4, well, 2, 3 or 4 take-home tips that our listeners could reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So if you do have a few of those tips in relation to your own practice, what would they be?
Understand your motivation for getting up every morning. Why do you do what you do? What's your personal mission? How is it aligned to the mission of the organization you work for? Really, really, really important. The second one is work really hard at the hard work. Look for personal reflection. Evaluate yourself. Create your own personal cycle of continuous improvement. Find things that are really difficult to do and do them as much as possible. I loathe public speaking. So find opportunities and do them as often as you can, whenever it is. And the last one I would say is maybe where I started with. Keep asking yourself continuously that question, especially if you're a leader. Why would anyone want to be led by me?
Brilliant. Thanks for your time today, Hans. That's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you both for having me, and it's been great. And like I said, Liverpool's been very seminal in terms of where I am and where I am in life, and my ties to the city run deep. And I hope this year is going to find. I'm hopefully going to be back in time to celebrate a very nice end of the season this year. So fingers crossed.